during the semester, and that is what will give you that grade to this point. Okay, so you're gonna have to ensure that all your outstanding works are submitted, and if you're having issues for some reason or another, you're gonna have to contact me and let me know, and then I'll be able to see if there are any adjustments that I can make to accommodate that. But you're gonna have to be clear, because I cannot operate on assumptions. The administration will be waiting and expecting me to meet my deadline, and in order for me to do that, you're gonna have to do your part, right? So that we can get that out of the way. I would have posted some stuff on the stream because we're going to be dealing with portrait drawing soon, and I noticed Ashma would have asked a question about them not using comparative measurement. Now, one of the things you're going to recognize when we are dealing with, and Ashma disappear, when we're dealing with these kinds of expression, there's no one approach to painting or drawing, and that's something that you need to remember. I remember when we met early in the semester, that's one of the things that I would have spoken about. But I said in my class, I want us to focus on comparative measurement, because I want us to be in a position where we can work without those additional simplification tools, so to speak. So things like grids and taking photographs and tracing and all of those things, it's not that it's not allowed. It's just that what it does, it strips you of that ability to do things with the natural techniques. Well, not the natural technique, but acquired techniques, so to speak. So if you can have the ability to use comparative measurements and sighting, and you can work like that, then yes, you can use the grid and you can use the tracing. So when it's situation, right, is where you don't have the luxury of tracing or using grids, then you go to comparative measurement and sighting. So essentially what I'm doing, because I'm pretty sure you would have done gridding in analysis of form, and I don't want to expose you to that again. That's an easy process that should have been understood by now. But sighting and comparative measurement is something that I'm pretty sure that you didn't get a chance to explore. And what I'm doing is giving you an opportunity to explore, to add to your arsenal or your repertoire, so to speak. So that when you were in a situation where you're called upon, let's say for example you're going to do a mural outdoors and you have a large area where you have to cover, your grid might not necessarily be the easiest approach there. It might be inconvenience, or tracing might not necessarily be the easiest approach. But if you understand sighting and comparative measurement, then you can go ahead and get that done. All right, so please remember that different approaches could be used, but in this particular class, we're looking at sighting and comparative measurement, because it's going to allow you to work without those other systems, and it will be another technique that you have available to yourself that you can work with and use. All right. So please ensure that you're looking at these videos. I would have also sent you some information as it relates to, as you can see here, the art criticism, because when we come back after the semester break, that is something that you will be a part of now. I will be requiring you to do criticism. I'm pretty sure you'll have seen some of those videos that I would have posted of the students from the advanced painting class. Is everyone hearing me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good. I'm sure you would have seen those videos from the advanced painting class. And similarly, you will be required to produce stuff along those lines. It's not gonna be that tech heavy, but you're gonna have to do criticisms of your colleagues' work, and you will need to know what are the fundamentals of the steps to art criticism, so that you can use them and use them correctly when you're assessing those works that will be assigned to you. And as a result of that, of course, you'll go back to the information that was posted early in the semester. I'm not going to go down till to that one. You know where it is, the steps to art criticism that was posted. Please ensure that you are au fait with the fundamentals that are associated with that process, because that is what we will be using when you are assigned work. In some instances, you'll be asked to do criticism via video, which means you record yourself doing it. And in some cases, during the live stream that we have, like this morning, I'm going to have you do it during that session as well. So it's important that you ensure that you read and understand the basics. And if you have any doubts about anything, you can always ask for clarification, or you can go and you can double check for additional information, or you can go and look at some of the examples posted by the senior students, because those are available on YouTube, to get some ideas in terms of how they would have gone about doing it. Because if you listen to them carefully and listen to the different presentations, you recognize that there are certain things that reoccurs, and that's because the steps to art criticism require that you approach it in a particular way. All right? So all of these things I'm giving you in advance in preparation for those activities. So I'm hoping that you're using these references, because if I'm posting the information, the resources on the stream, and you're not using it, then you are putting yourself in a position of disadvantage when the activity comes along. All right? Are there any questions, clarification, anything at this stage that you would have done so far in this semester that you want some clarification on, that you want to speak to before we move
Sir,
on?
you
This
said
morning
that
will be very long. Go ahead.
you said that this is the next week is semester break, but I saw you post a landscape assignment due on a Wednesday.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that you can't get work done and send it in at that time. That there is a bit tricky. The thing about that, I would have posted that a bit late, because as you can see, the last assignment was due on the 24th. So that would have slipped me, and that's one of the reasons why I would have skipped that over into next week. But what I'm going to do, I'm not going to weigh heavily like I would weigh on the others from the 24th going down to the 27th of August. Those are important because I would have posted those within the time slot. The one that I would have posted late, I am not going to necessarily add. I'm not going to add that to the mid-semester assessment, because I cannot be unfair to you. I would have posted it late because I should have posted that earlier. But I'm going to leave that. But because you should have done all the others, which would mean that the due date for this one, the 24th, that should have been finished already. It means that you should be able to work on this. But I'm not going to take away from your mid-semester break. You would have earned that. And what I'm going to do, that is going to be due when you return after the semester break. But if you want to do it and submit it at that date, I don't have a problem. But you will not be penalized for late submission. In fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and I'm going to change the submission date for that, just to ensure that I'm being fair to everyone, because I don't want to think. Because I was a bit lapsed in my posting of that, so let me switch that. So instead of next week, I'll put it for the 20th. Leave that there. Now you know that with this particular landscape assignment, I did not post any previous sources of references. And that was deliberate, because I want to see how you were going to go about doing your own investigation, because you would have known that in the past, prior to the submission of an assignment or the posting of an assignment, I would either do one of two things. I would post the video in the assignment, or I would post the video prior to the assignment on the stream or on the same day. But this time I'm not going to give you any references, because I want to see how you go about doing your own individual research in preparation for this assignment, because by and large I've been spoon feeding you by giving you these resources in advance in terms of specific videos. This time around I'm not doing that, because I want to see how you're going to approach your work from an individual basis. So that's why I did not post anything on landscape drawing. But of course you know where to go and get your resources, references and that. So I would expect you to go and do some reading on your own and see how you go about gathering information and how you use it in the execution of that process. Okay?
Okay, sir. Also, we would have to choose our own reference photo.
Yes, you're gonna have to do that. You're gonna have to do that, because and if you are working from your environment, if let's say if you're in an environment where you have some good landscape views that you can take a photograph and work from it, that's fine. If you're not going to do that, if you're going to use the internet as a source of reference, whatever source you're using, ensure you're using local photographs, not international photographs, please. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Any other question, concern? I note that on our list, our class list, even though I would have seen stuff from Javon, and I think that's only one assignment I would have seen posted from him. And Meldrick was saying that he's working. I haven't seen anything from Meldrick. And neither Javon or Meldrick have been attending any of these streams, live streams. So I don't know what is going on. And by and large, you're not saying anything much. And I'm saying for the record, and this is going to be recorded and is going to be here available, so in the event that there are any protests or querying of grades and those kind of things, I will be on record as saying that every time I have come to this class, I've inquired as it relates to Meldrick and Javon, because I know that of the 7 persons, I've never seen any of them on the stream. And yes, you would have replied to some of my messages, but replying is not the same as getting the assignment completed. So you're not as active as you're supposed to be, and you have to know why is that so. And the fact that you're not communicating with me, you'll also know why is that so. Of course, when I'm submitting my mid-semester grades, in the case of Javon and Meldrick, because I really don't know what is going on, whatever you don't have grades for, I'm just going to give you 0. And when you start calculating the work that we would have covered for the semester, 1, but we're not going to count the landscape. 1, 2, 3, 4, it's like 5 different sets of pieces. Let me be very exact. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 submissions. And if you do your calculation, you see what's going to happen. That's midterm failing grade you're staring down at right there. So you folks will have to know what's going on. I know our situation, because of how things are, is difficult, but if you don't communicate with me, then I'm leave to draw conclusions, and I'm not going to deal with assumptions at this stage. The fact that I would have provided an open platform for you to communicate and to state what is going on, and to ask for clarification or extension or excuse for whatever it is that you might be experiencing, and you did not capitalize on that, that means that you're prepared to face the consequences that will follow as a result of not submitting work for grading. Okay? Because if I don't submit my grades, I'm going to have to answer to the administration why I didn't reach my deadlines, and I'm going to have to provide an explanation. And I don't want to be not doing what I'm supposed to do as a result of persons not doing what they're supposed to do. This is an adult institution, and we're all adults. You speak to me, and I can always be flexible in the way I deal with stuff. And the beauty about this platform is that all the records in terms of communication will be evident. So in terms of one time I would have seen stuff so far when I scroll along the street. So you don't have to decide how you all are going to deal with whatever it is, because the date for drop, add and drop, and withdrawal is already been passed. So you have to know. Okay? Any other question, concerns? For those persons, because there are quite a few persons when we look at what is going on in the assignment area, there's still a lot of persons who have not submitted there. So for those who have not been able to meet those deadlines, is there anything that you want to say? If you don't want to stay on the stream, you can always do a private message. That's understandable. So I know exactly how we go about approaching stuff. All right? Question, comments, clarifications? I'm listening.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Sir, I would like to ask if you can do like a little brush up on the grid because when we were in analysis of form, sir just told us the measurements and he asked us to get it done. He didn't do any demonstration really as to what are the correct procedure to do the grid. So, I had learned it I think was 2008 when I was in part-time class from graphic designing, and I tried and I did something, but I still want to ask you to do a little brush up on it to clarify. Maybe there's a lot of things we don't know about that procedure.
Well, the grid. I mean, I'm gonna let me pull something up. But like I said, for me, one of the reasons I don't use it is because I feel it is more. It's like in my opinion, it's like a cop out to the drawing process. And remember, we're dealing with drawing from observation. And for me, because I feel it's like a cop out, I really don't use it in my class. No, I always say to students, you have to understand context. And me saying not to use it in my class doesn't mean that you can't use it. Right? But it's just that I don't encourage it.
Sir, I just want to know how to do it properly. That's all. I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
want to know to do
yeah,
my
I'm
drawing.
coming to that. Yeah, one moment.
Yeah.
Let me switch. Okay, so I'm in YouTube, and this is more often than not, it is my default search engine for stuff related to art. Now, if you come here, let me see this one. Now, of course, when you come here, one of the things that you always got to remember while it loads, one of the things you always have to remember is that you have to learn content curating when you're dealing with the internet and gathering information from any source. So when you come and you're looking, for example, how to use grid method to draw, you're going to see a whole lot of videos. You have to make an informed decision about which one is going to work for you and which one to spend your time on, because you could spend your time looking at a whole lot of videos that don't make sense in the end. Right? For example, this one is 11 minutes. And because we're dealing with a live stream and I don't want to keep you waiting, I'm just going to speed that up to 1.7, 1.2. Because as you can see, all of this there, we really don't need all of that. So I'm just going to rush through that. Now, because he has the chapter system, I can also go through and work with the chapter. Because all of that look like it's just ads running there. And we come clear to the real meat of this stuff. And that's one of the things that you're going to have to learn. But when you're dealing with system, and I think I'm going to just go back to the thumbnail. If you look at what is going on here, when you line it up, right? And if I go over there, it's going to disappear because it's going to go short preview. Are you seeing that there?
Yes, sir.
When you line up your grid, by and large, what you're doing, you're using a dimension. So let's say for example, each one of those squares represents an inch. When you line it up on your photograph, it's always advisable that when you're gridding is that the number of squares are even. So that when you come to the end, if you look at the left side of that grid, that with the Asian person, you will know that one of the last sets of square look like they're ½ inch rather than 1 inch. You see that on the left side, this side here. You know that? Did you notice that? You're gonna have to work with me right where my cursor is. it is the column of grids there are small. It's like half the others.
Sir, it's not really showing clearly.
It's not showing clearly. All right, one moment. How about that?
That's better.
Good. Now, if you note that set of grids on the left side, usually when I'm doing my grids, I strive to avoid that because it means that now when you're going to do the grid on the transfer surface, whether it's a paper or canvas, then you're going to have to ensure that you make provision for those sets. And usually, it's not that you can't work, but that unevenness I tend to avoid. So let's say you would have grid your work up, and each one of those grid represent 1 inch on the original photograph. And on the paper or on the canvas that you're transferring or you're striving to make that drawing on, your canvas is 3 times the size of your picture. Or let's say you have a picture and your picture is 3 feet. Right? When you come to your canvas now, you have to ensure that each square is going to be double its dimension or its size. So let's say in the picture it is 1 inch. On your stuff, it should be at least 3 inches per square, which means that the picture is going to be 3 times as large as the one that you were drawing. Make sense? Does it make sense?
Yes,
And of
sir.
course, this goes for anyone who's in the group. It doesn't mean that Samir is the only one could thing. So what is going to happen now? When you translate that, you have to ensure that if you have 10 rows across and 12 rows down on the surface that you're going to be doing your transfer to, you need to ensure that you have the same amount of squares. Because if you don't have the same amount of squares, your drawing is not going to fit accurately on the on the final surface that you're striving to get it on. And the reason why that is important is because when you start to draw, you're looking at what is in the square, and you're drawing exactly what you see in the square onto the paper. So let's say, and that's the disadvantage of. Let me do it this way. We're going to work with a picture instead, because the video is going to always trip us up. So we go to a picture. Are you seeing that? Because with the image we can always zoom in, zoom out. Let's take the easy one. I hope that's not a video. Yeah. Are you seeing that one there? This one here?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
large.
This
sir.
one is it, sir.
Good. So what is happening there is that if you look carefully, if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's say 6 3/4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 3/4. So when you come now, but as you can see, these squares, the size of this one here is the same as this one here. So this is pretty easy. So when you come to each square, whatever it is in this square is what you must fit exactly in that square when you're making the transfer. What we want to look at one where you're going on a larger scale, and I think this one might be a better one to look at. Let me see. Let's go to the original source and we might be able to change that up. But the grid methods is pretty easy, and as you can see, I mean, there's so many different sources online that you could use. But what I want to get one where you actually have a smaller picture and you're going to a larger transfer. And I think this one is like that. Let me download it, because it might be easier for us to do with that. pull it up as an image. And then we're going to look at that from there. One moment. Good. Now we have a picture. So it is obvious this here is smaller than this. So because this is so small, you see the amount of grids that she has to go across here. It look like 18. If my count is right, seems like 18. And when you come to your larger picture, you have to have 18 across. And then it looked like it's 13 going down. And then you have to ensure, no, it's actually 15. If we look at what's going on there, yeah. And it's 15 going down. You with me so far?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So whatever it is, whatever it is that you have on your original in terms of rows and columns must be the same numbers of rows and columns when you come to the larger transfer surface. The one-to-one is easy, but when you have to up it, that's where the difference is going to come. So if at any point in time your grids are off, you'll run into problems, which means that when you're gridding here, you have to ensure that you're consistent too, because you can't have one grid, one set of grids where you have, let's say, 1 inch, and then when you come here, you have 1.25 inches because you aren't paying attention. With grids, you got to be precise, which means you're working with squares, and a square has 4 equal sides. So you cannot grid up incorrect here, and you have lines running slanted and all of that, and then you come here and the lines are running straight, because when you start to look in each individual square, you're going to find things that are not going to match up, because that's how you make the exact transfer. You're basically looking at the square. That's why you have the numbers that are going vertical and horizontal. So you're making a comparison to put exactly what you see in those squares. And as you put it, it's like a puzzle. It's going to all start fitting together. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And from my experience, one of the difficulties most persons who are doing it for the first time will get is understanding the importance of gridding properly on the original photograph and ensuring that you're gridding properly on the transfer surface, so to speak, that you're going to put the work on. If you're going to go larger, you're going to have to start calculating. So therefore, with gridding as well, one of the things you're going to have to remember, you're going to have to remember dimension. So you're going to have to remember width as compared to height. Because if you're off with that, you're going to run into problems. Now, if you're doing it deliberately where you want the picture to be on one side, that's a different thing. So when you're calculating your squares, then there's a whole lot of squares. Let's say you wanted more space on this side, you're gonna have to have a whole lot of squares on this side that you're gonna have to eliminate or ignore in your gridding, or you're gonna have to grid and remember that I'm just focusing on the grid section of the surface. So all of those factors you have to take into consideration. And what tends to happen because of inexperience, students get confused. So when you use grid, you can either go smaller, so you can actually draw smaller than this, which means that if this is 1 inch square, if you want to go smaller than this, you're going to have to do 1/2 inch squares onto the transfer surface that you're going to make the trace, the drawing on. If you're going to go large, it means that your squares have to be larger, and that's how you're going to up the size of the work. Other than that, everything else is pretty straightforward. You just draw what's in the different squares. So you're taking it one square at a time. But you still have to pay attention too, by the way. So, and with gridding, one of the ways that makes it more easy is by paying attention to the negative space in the square. And that is something that we would have talked about when we discussed still life composition. That the negative space is just as important as the positive space to help you to ensure that things are in the right place. As it relates to grids, it's also important. So you're not just looking at where the line for the nose fall, you're looking at the negative space that's left when you pull the line. So just in case you're going in the wrong direction, you can make a correction. Because let's say you go and you just pull this line straight on here, because you think that's how the nose is supposed to go. But when you look, if you really look at the grid, you know that the grid says that the distance from this line here to the edge here is shorter than the distance from here to here. That's how negative space becomes important. So when you start pulling a line out, you're taking that into consideration. Make sense?
Yes, sir.
And in the instance where you would have seen them use it in the portrait artist of the year, I particularly send those videos for you to see that there aren't really any limitations to the approaches that you use. But at the same time, you must be able to be familiar with different approaches so that you won't get sucked into one approach where you end up doing everything tracing, because there will be times when you will be asked or challenged to work outside of your comfort zone where you might not have the benefit of a grid or the benefit of a tracing paper. And in that instance, you must be able to rely on your ability to use sighting and comparative measurement. Because even though you're using tracing and the grid format, you still have to look carefully, because persons do grid and draw wrong. So your powers of analysis, of observing and recording what you see is still going to be important. So your ability to look and analyze, that don't go through the window because you're using gridding or tracing, because you still have to pay attention to those. And I think that's one of the reasons why most persons tend to fail with gridding. Tracing is a little more easy because you basically just pull the lines that you see. It's only when the image gets complex and then you don't know what to leave out, then it gets a bit tricky for tracing. But for something like this, tracing is easy. But grid is, some persons get carried away because they don't pay attention to the fact that I still have to observe and compare what I'm doing, because you have to compare what is here and what you're pulling here. And if it's not correct, then it's going to be wrong. So I'm hoping that would have made sense, and it's better. But as you can see, both professionals and amateur utilize these tools. But as an art school student, one of the things that I always advocate is it's not a technique I use in my drawing class, because I'm dealing with intermediate and advanced drawing, and I feel by the time you get to intermediate drawing, you should not be relying on grading to the thing. You should be learning the fundamentals of drawing from observation. That includes sighting and comparative measurement. And sighting and comparative measurement is almost like you're using grids. It's just that you're not actually drawing up stuff, because you still got to understand the fundamentals. How you extend your elbows, which eyes to close, how you translate what you see in reality onto the paper. It's the same system you're using. It's just it's the same way. It's the same. Let me put it this way. It's a copying system. It's just that it uses different simplification tools, so to speak. In the case of the grids, the squares and where the lines fall in the square is what helps you to simplify how the lines are running for the face. With comparative measurement and sighting, now you're depending on your ability to remember simple geometric shapes, because you have to usually start a face with an oval in most cases, and you start stripping the face down to the basic shapes for it before you start adding all of these fancy things in terms of hairstyle and all that after. So it's basically the same approach, is just that you're using things in a different way. Okay? Do I use tracing? No. But when I'm working with certain major projects, if I'm dealing with time constraints and I have multiple pieces that I have to work with, I'm going to have a large sheet of paper, and I'm going to use a projector, and I will trace my image there, and then I'll do a transfer system where I scratch to the back. And let's say I'm doing a billboard, I just take that, roll it up, tape it onto the billboard, and then I trace. That makes it easier for me, because the convenience of taking a projector outdoor and projecting on the billboard or the wall or wherever it is that I'm doing and working might not be convenient depending on the location. For example, when I work at the culture center, I will do my tracing on a large sheet. Those new sprints, I will assemble several pieces together, ensure the dimension fits the size of the board and whatever it is I'm writing, and I will do all my letterings like that. And then I take it there, tape it, and I trace, remove it, and then I start to work. Sometimes I can actually work directly on the surface because I know what I'm doing, but sometimes, depending on the technicality of the images and the letters that you're using, it takes a longer time, and tracing is an easy approach to use. So that's what I'm saying. It's not that I don't use it, but I use it within context. And if I'm doing stuff that is graphics related, I use that a lot because it makes the work easy. If I'm dealing with portrait drawings, for example, for clients who need it at a certain time, rather than me sitting down and working through doing the sketch, and I don't do that, because for me, to get the composition and the layout out of the way fast, it allows me to focus on just getting the features and the colors and all those things into place. Because yes, you can get the outline, which is what gridding is going to do. But if you don't understand shading and values and tones, you're still going to mess up the picture anyway. Let me just make sure that is clear to everyone. You being able to draw this exact outline of the face and the hair and the head and all of that don't mean anything if you don't know how to shade. So ensure that is very, very clear. So you still have to understand those fundamentals. And you can grid for shading. That comes from observation and knowing exactly what you're doing. How you differentiate light from dark, from shadow, from intermediate tones, from intermediate lights, from cast shadow, and all of those things, of course, we would have looked at because they're visuals on the stream to help you deal with those things. So I hope that would have made a little more sense to you and help you to understand the context. So I'm not saying to you just because I don't do it in my class to throw away gridding or tracing. No, I'm saying understand context. And in my class, it ain't going to help you because I don't want you to do that. And I will know when you do it because your lines are not going to be as true as if you draw directly from observation using the construction or guidelines in the initial stages of work. And of course, you know that that's one of the reasons why I asked for 3 photographs of the different stages of your work when you're submitting. And in some cases, I would have seen persons submit work where I know that some amount of tracing was done. Now, I don't have to call persons out, but I know when it happens because I look at the way you pull your lines in those initial stages. And if you can't do that consistently, then something is wrong. Okay? Did that clarify gridding for you?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Sir.
Yes.
I got cut off. I got bumped off the internet when you were speaking about the landscape. Can you please go over that for me?
Yeah, what would have happened, I would have been a bit late in the posting of that particular assignment. So that one, even though it's posted already, we're just going to complete that for when we come back after the semester break. So you don't have to complete that one before the semester, but that's going to be submitted after semester break. I would have already changed the submission date on it. And one of the things that I would have said is that I did not post any reference videos along with it or before I would have submitted it because I want to see how you're going to go about and do your individual researching to gather information to make an effective landscape drawing because there are lots of resources out there. What I've been doing so far is to provide you with the reference sources, which is pretty easy. It's spoon feeding, by the way. And I want to avoid that. I want to see how you're going to go out and do your own independent searching and what you're going to come up with in terms of information that will allow you to execute that assignment effectively. So that's why I did not post any prior video talking about landscape drawings.
Okay, sir. So, this landscape, we have to imaginary or realistic?
No. You have to.
Type of landscape.
You're gonna, and that's a good question. You're gonna have to either work with a photograph or you work from direct observation. Those are always the 2 options that I would have students work with in my class, because of course you might not live in an environment where you have beautiful views outside your window or on your porch or your landing, but you might be driving or walking and you see something that looks good. You can take a photograph of it and work from the photograph. Or if you're not in that position, then you would have to use a photograph from the internet. But I would have said that if you're going to use a photograph from the internet, you're going to have to use something that is local, not international scenes. Something that is local is going to be better. But I'm pretty sure that your environment has enough, and because you have the extended time now in terms of when to submit that particular piece of work, then I would suggest that you take your photograph or you find that location that you can be drawing from. Because in my case, there's some sections of my house that I can look through the window and I can have some decent landscapes that I could draw. You might be in a location where you can do that, or maybe when you come out in your yard you can see some stuff. Do small sketches and then you go back inside and you put it all together, and you have your small sketches. You probably take photographs to supplement, and you make what you call it, a record of what you're doing. The other reason why I would have sent these portrait of the year videos, and I'm hoping that persons would have looked at it in that way, is for you to see the different processes that goes into the production of a work of art. In this case, a portrait. It's not just you just get a person sit down and draw. No. If you look at how some of those artists would have approached it, they did pencil sketches. Some took photographs from different angles, all different things. And particularly this last video that I would have sent, this was the final, where you had the 3 finalists that would have been working. And in the finalists competition, you always have 2 things happening. They would have to do a commission piece, and then they would have to do a live piece of the sitter, as they would have done throughout the competition. The commission piece is where you get to see how much research goes into the production of a good portrait work, where they sit and talk to the sitter, the person who they're doing the drawing of. They talk, they ask questions, and all of that they factor into when they're putting together their portraits. And those are the things as art students I need you to pay attention to, because very often lots of persons think, oh, you just put a picture on a piece of paper, you look at the picture, you draw the face and want it to look like the person that's a portrait. No. If you're an art student and that's how you're looking at portraits, you're looking at it from the shallow end of the scale. And I want you to recognize how much research and how much thought process goes into the production of a work of art. And also, I'm hoping that you would have listened to how the judges would ask the participants questions, how they would have responded to the questions, and then I would have also hoped that you paid attention to how the judges spoke about the work, what they look for, how they describe them, and what are the factors that they think would have really made the work stand out. Because those are all things that you have to take into consideration as art students. When you're painting, when you're drawing, when you're producing ceramics, whatever medium you're working in, all of these things become factors that influence your production. It's not just looking and drawing. And that's where the average layman make the ignorant cliche statement that art is for dunces, and art is for people who don't know, who are not academically inclined. And by and large, some of us perpetuate that because we operate that way. And we continue to feed that beast of misconception. And in some cases, some of us even make it worse, because when persons come and talk to us about our work, we can't even talk about our work properly. And that's one of the reasons why when we come after the semester break, you will be also challenged now to start critically assessing work via videos that will be posted, that will be uploaded online. Now I'm giving you the heads up now, so if you're one of those shaky leaves kind of person who fall to pieces when you start talking, and all of a sudden your words start getting muffled and you're swallowing your tongue and your English start breaking up and all, now is a good time for you to start polishing those things up, so that when you come now, you're going to get rid of those excess nerve energies, and it ain't going to be as devastating as you shaking up, falling to pieces and sweating all over the camera and them kind of stuff. So I just give you a heads up so you could prepare yourself, because you would have, if you look at good examples of critiques, you're going to realize that it's not that you're going to hit it out of the park on the first go, but you'll be able to represent yourself well. And you ain't going to crawl under the table when your video playing and your family watching it with you. Is that clear to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Now,
Yes,
I'm not saying
sir.
I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm just saying because it's just part of the reality of art criticism. You're gonna have to speak, and you're gonna have to speak well. And,
Sir.
Yes.
I'm still not getting through with the loop on my phone.
Well, then what you're
I
gonna
tried
have to
it,
do? Uh-huh.
but I didn't get through.
Well, then what you're gonna have to do is use the screen recorder, because there is a screen recorder that comes with all smartphones. It's one of those features that are part of smartphone productions today. So you're gonna have to use that for now, until you figure out how to deal with the loom on the on your stuff, because sometimes different devices got limitation. My device, because I deal with technology, when I'm purchasing devices, I don't purchase by brand name. I purchase based on what I'm using it for. So when I'm buying phone, for example, I ensure that I have a processor that is fast. So I look for processing speed. I also look for storage. And in contemporary time, you should not buy a device that is less than 32 gigs in space. Because every time the apps from the App Store that you download update, they occupy more space. Every time you update your software on the phone, things are added to it, which means it's occupying more space. And if you're not tech savvy, some of those bloatwares or some of those, and bloatware are basically applications that you're not using. It's just that the brand or the company that makes the phone put all of these things on their stuff as part of marketing and all that kind of stuff. If you don't know how to delete those, all of those are going to be occupying space. So when I purchase a phone that is at least 32 gigs in terms of space. Screen size, I tend to go at least no less than 5.5 because sometimes I do multitask stuff on my screen and I need the size for that purpose. Okay? And then I look at my battery life because I do a lot of stuff outdoors and I don't want to be every day I have to charge my phone 2-3 times. I look for phones that with battery life at least 5,000 milliamp, which is going to give me at least roughly on average use 2 to 3 days without me having to look back to charge. Now, if I'm doing heavy use, I can still get to go through the entire day without pulling my ear out, knowing that the battery going to go on me and them kind of stuff. And then, of course, I look at the camera because I do a lot of photographing, and because I'm always mobile, I always take advantage of scenes that I see. So I look for stuff. The selfie camera is not a biggie to me, because I don't do a lot of selfie, but the back camera is what I look at. And very often, most cameras now is going to come at least 14 megapixel. And then you got the ones who are going to get ridiculous to 20 something and 40 something. But if you have a good quality camera, and if you know stuff about cameras, you'll be able to make informed choices. That's how I go about buying my stuff. And then I look at the reliability of the brands. And I will always do my background research online. And I'm saying all of this to you so if you're in the market to get something new, you will not run and go and buy a Samsung just because everybody said a Samsung is a brand name, or you go and buy an Apple just because everybody seems to suggest that that's the best phone. Because there are lots of phones that are out there that are better than the Samsung and the Apple in terms of what it's being used for. Because a lot of times when you buy those phones, a lot of persons have the Apple phones and they don't use half of the stuff that's in the ecosystem. You don't need it. So you just buy stuff for style. It don't make sense. See what I mean? So instead of you going the route of following the crowd, I would suggest that you do some informed research before you purchase. And I can talk to you the way I'm talking to you because tech is something that I use a lot of. And I would have had my occasions where I would have made foolish choices in terms of buying brands. The brand that I use is Redmi. I don't move from that. I've been using that for a long time now. Redmi. And it's reliable. Lots of persons think Chinese companies don't produce good stuff. That's not true. You could go check your research and do your research on those phones. Xiaomi Redmi Note, they have different brands, but that's the one that I use mainly. And it's pretty reliable. They have some very good cameras. They have good battery life, I can tell you that. And well, the space is dependent on you. But in terms of battery life and cameras, and in terms of processor speed, they get the job done. So most applications that comes with phone and that is used on phone, I can use because my devices can take it. And I don't have to walk around flashing something with an Apple or a Samsung logo to feel good. Because the phone don't make me, or the phone is not what allows me to do what I do. It's the features on the phone that gives me the advantage to do what I want. So that's just some additional information for you to make a note of when you are thinking with devices. Because I know some of y'all got some brand name phones and they ain't really worth anything anyway. A lot of those Apple phones, the battery life don't stand the test of time in the day. You got to charge it sometimes 2-3 times, depends on how heavy a user you are. And if you're doing videoing and you're looking at stuff on YouTube, that's going to be even worse. Your battery life is going to run out like crazy. And then if you have a phone at this age, as the phone gets older, the battery capacity starts to lose its strength, so you don't hold the charge for as long as it does. So all of those things you gotta be aware of. And I'm pretty sure a lot of persons are not familiar with the fact that every time you update an application, that's one of the reasons why you should go in your Play Store and choose the applications that would automatically update. The ones that you really don't use, that you don't need, take off the auto update, because if you don't, every time a new update comes, it's going to update and it's going to take up space on your phone. And that's when your phone start running slow, and then it start freezing, and then it start shutting down, and then it start rebooting, because your space start running out. Tech Information Day. Tech 101. Yes, any other question?
No, sir. No, sir.
So we're all good. We know what we need to get done. And all the...
By the way, what medium did I use for the landscape drawing?
The medium for the landscape drawing, I'm going to say let's use one of those mediums that we're not accustomed to use. So we're not going to use pencil for sure. So you have pen or one of the color mediums. And one of those color mediums is going to either be the color pencil, your pen, or pastels.
Okay.
Because we've been working a lot with pencil, and I want us to move away from that, just to give us that extra option of dealing with all the stuff. Yes, there you go. I would have posted stuff on how to work with color pencil. So you have blending stuff here, so you can go about, and you have stuff here for the pastels. So you can see that I would have been preparing you in advance. And with these mediums, understanding the fundamentals, and the fundamentals got to do with blending, by the way. The fundamentals also has to do with understanding the type of paper you're working on, and that's where you have these do's and don'ts, and this is a very good video to study for that. Understanding that if you saturate the fibers of the paper, and papers come with fibers, by the way, if you put color, after a while it's going to start sliding off. And despite how much you blend, it's not going to show. And then it's going to start getting muddy. Those are things that you have to start learning quickly, so that when you're working, and of course it comes from trial and error, you'll know where to make your adjustments along the way. But this do's and don't video is a very good one for the pastel for you to understand. And by and large, the same thing can translate for the color pencil, because color pencil, after a while, when you put so much color on the surface, and they got the do's and don'ts here, that's also going to, of course, you recognize how I'm providing you with information. I'm providing you with stuff that puts you in a position where when you actually get to the execution, if you use the resources, then when you start seeing certain things, it's not going to be a surprise to you, and you're not going to be left lost, because you know exactly why things are behaving the way they're behaving, because you would have been studying the video and you know exactly what is going on. Now, if you didn't use them, well, that's a different thing altogether. And of course, when I'm looking at your work for marking, these are things I'll be looking for to see how you blend, what technique you use, the richness of your colors. If you are one of those ones who quickly reach for the black to draw shadows, please ensure you're not one of those students. There are many ways in which you create shadows, not by putting black. You do your research, and a good period of art to study, to understand what colors you blend to use to create shadow would be the Impressionists. I didn't put anything here, but I'm giving you that extra research. You should write that down. Go study the works of the Impressionists, because they study the effects of light on color, and that's what they basically focus on when they produce their work. Go study what they would have done and how they represent shadows in their work, and you're going to learn some things that you can use when you're working with your color pencil and when you're working with your pastels in terms of how you represent shadows. So I should not be seeing anybody giving me black as a representation of shadows when you're working. It's not that you can't use black, but don't use it for the shadow, please. Okay?
Yes.
Okay,
So
sir. And if we're using the color medium and so on, do we have a specific amount of colors to use, or are we just gonna use the colors that the photo is to have?
No, that's going to be your choice. That's going to be your choice. Because remember now, I'm assuming that somewhere along the line you're all doing intermediate painting. And if you're doing intermediate painting, you're going to learn some color theory there. And once you're painting, you're going to have to learn some fundamentals of color. I don't know if you're doing color theory as a subject area itself. This is separate from what you're going to do in painting. But if you're doing intermediate painting, you should be exposed to some amount of color theory. So you're going to know what are the colors you need to use. And even if you don't know, from the reference videos on the stream, you should get an idea of how to approach it in terms of how you use colors. And if you go and study the Impressionists, and if you're doing a good job of studying landscape drawings, and more specifically landscape drawing in color, if that's what you're going to use, then you'll be able to find answers to those questions in terms of how you go about using colors and what types of colors you use. Because when you're dealing with foliage and when you're dealing with greens, when light affects green, you're going to have 3 different values. You're going to have your light, the greens that will represent the light areas, and you have the greens that represent the dark areas, and then you're going to have the greens that represent the cast shadow areas, and those are all 3 different values. And you're going to have to blend different color combinations in different percentages to get those. Okay?
Okay, sir.
And a quick note before you go. When you're blending colors, if you use 50% of red, and that means when you're shading on your paper, you're shading using, and remember in one of those drawing videos, they talk about pressure control. That is going to become very, very important when you're drawing with color as well. If you go 1 layer of blue, and then you take and you go 1 layer of yellow, you have to apply the same amount of pressure that you apply when you apply the blue first on the yellow. You have to ensure that you're putting the same percentage. That's going to give you one type of green. But if you go 1 layer of blue and 2 layers of yellow, that's going to give you a different type of green. And if you go 2 layers of blue and 1 layer of yellow, which means you're alternating, you're going to get a different type of green. So all of those things you're going to learn when you experiment on your small scrap pieces to see what results you get with colors when you factor in the percentage factor. That's math, by the way. For those who just fall to pieces when the people come and tell you do not because you can't do nothing else, must use them kind of example for them. That's percentage. If you don't understand percentage, your colors are not going to be right. So I thought I'd just stick that in before we leave. And if there are no further questions, I'm going to bring the broadcast to an end. And of course, the stream is always there, and the WhatsApp group is always there as well. Feel free to contact at any time for clarification. For those persons who weren't a part of the stream today, I'm going to upload the recording to the classroom so that you can go through back and see if there's anything that you can gather from it and work with that. For those persons who would have spoken to me personally, I will be taking into consideration the things that we spoke about, but at the set time, I need you to make the effort to get some work in so I can do some marking to get something there for you, so that when I'm submitting, at least your name is marked with grades next to it rather than a set of zeros or a set of foul legs. And then you start crying when you see a final percentage for the mid-semester assessment. For working towards the end of the semester, I'm not going to do a mid-semester virtual exhibition for the drawing class, because as you can see, there are too many outstanding pieces, and it's putting together the exhibition it takes some effort, and to having to wait and to remind persons to do stuff, that's going to be too much. But definitely towards the end of semester, we're going to have a general virtual exhibition of all the work that you would have done for the semester. So please make sure that you make a note of that, so that you continue to take quality photographs, which means you need to go back to the video that I would have posted on the stream on how to photograph your art. This one here, go back and ensure you study that video so that you're taking quality photographs, so that when I take your stuff and upload it to the virtual exhibition, I don't have to cut off half of your stuff because you got your tablecloth or your floor or the door in the background or wherever it is. No, take proper photographs. Ensure that it's a true representation of the colors that are in the work itself, so that when it is placed in the virtual exhibition, the viewing experience is going to be very satisfying. And you're going to get an opportunity to see the advanced painting virtual exhibition that is going to be released at, if not next week, probably the following week. Again, the reason I can't give you the definite word is because some of those students still have some outstanding information that's necessary for that virtual exhibition, and that is why I won't be able to give you a definite thing. But if everything goes as planned and they submit what they're supposed to submit, by next week that exhibition will be available, and I will post it in the WhatsApp group, and I will post it here as well, and you will get an opportunity to see what your virtual exhibition is going to be like come the end of the semester. Also, in those exhibitions, you're going to have audio recordings. That is one of the reasons why when we come back, we're going to start with the art criticism aspects of things, because you're going to need to know to talk about your work and talk about work of art, so that when persons are looking at video, they're struggling to understand what you're saying. So you're going to have the prep work, so that when you come to the actual virtual exhibition and the presentation, you won't be at sea and it will not be anything foreign to you. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not going to do a mid-semester virtual exhibition for this class, but definitely for the advanced painting. And I'm doing that with the advanced painting because that's a class that they're familiar with the process. Some of them has been in my class before, so we're able to move a little more smoothly with that thing. But it's going to be a good example for you to look at, so that you have an idea of what yours is going to look like. And those virtual exhibitions, I want you to see them as a form of digital portfolios, because they will always be available online. And if somebody is saying, okay, I want a piece of your work, let me see what you have done, you could always go to a video, send them to YouTube, say, look at this video. I have works there. These are some of my work that I would have done at so and so time, so persons see where the development is taking place. So take this seriously, please. All right?
Okay, sir.
All right. Have a good day, everyone. See you.
Okay.